After coding some simple projects, maybe you want to start using a CSV file or a text file as an input into your program. But the problem you're running into now is, how do I open that file, or how do I access that file from my program? The most common way to get data from a file in C is by using the function fopen. Now, fopen is really simple and it's really common, but sometimes it just doesn't work right, and it's hard to debug why it's not working. And so in this video, I'm going to go over how to use fopen and how to make sure that you can read a file every single time in your C functions. So my name's Henrik, and I'm here to help you learn the foundations of software development. So let's get started. Okay, so here's a typical program where we're using the function fopen, and maybe you have a grades.csv file or whatever file you're trying to open, and then you're just putting it in here, and then you put it in the same directory as your program, your .c file, and then when you run it, you get a segmentation fault. And this is why it can be frustrating for people, because this fault doesn't really explain what's going on. So the real issue that's going on here is that your program is looking for this file, but it cannot find it. And that's because it's looking for what is called the working directory. And something that most beginners don't understand is that the working directory and the source file directory are two different directories. So here we can see the source file directory, and that's just the directory where we have all of the source code and all of the source files, which is this fopen.c. This is the only file that we have for this program. So this is the source file directory, but there's actually something called a working directory, and the working directory in this project is debug. So here you can see fopen, the executable here, is being generated. So if I delete this, so I deleted it, but then when you compile the program, you can see that fopen is being generated here. This is the executable. And one key way, or one easy way to figure out what the working directory is or where it is by looking inside where the executable is. And so you can see already that the executable is not in the same directory as the fopen.c. Just for more clarity, here I have the Finder window, and so this is the source file directory right here. And then here is the working directory. So you can see here the executables being built in this debug folder. So this is your actual working directory. And because it cannot find the grades.csv file here, the program is not going to work. So you need to bring this grades.csv file into the debug directory. And then now it's inside the working directory. And so when you run this, when you run this program now, you can actually run it. And then now it can actually show you the first line of this grades.csv file. So the first line is name, grade. And so it's showing us the first line. So now it can actually find that CSV file and display the first line. Okay, so I moved the grades.csv file back into the source file directory. And I just want to show you, you can actually access this grades.csv file by telling fopen to go one directory back. So instead of this just saying grades.csv file or grades.csv, we can do .. And then when you do .. it means it's going to the previous directory and looking inside the previous directory for grades.csv. And so you can run this also and see now it's working. And you can see here I moved it, right? So it's not actually there anymore, and it's actually one directory behind. And so just looking at the Finder window, so we have the Finder window, the grades.csv is not here, it's actually here in the source file directory. So if you want to just start from here, as this is the working directory, you want to go to the previous directory. Then we go here, and then the grades.csv is here. And so that's why this program is able to find it, because we told it just go one directory back and then find this file there. And this is also another name for this is the file path. You give the file path here and then the actual file name here, and then fopen is able to find that file and then open it. Now this way of giving the file path for the grades.csv is what is known as the relative path. So it's just saying relative to the working directory, just go back one directory and then go to grades.csv. But there's another file path there's another term called absolute path. And absolute path will if you just give the absolute path, not relative to the working directory, just the path that you would see, like if you go to terminal and then you type pwd So this here is called the absolute path, and it's called the absolute path because it's showing you the path relative to the root directory of your computer. And so the root directory, you go from the root directory to users, to Henrik, documents, hmdev, github, fopen, debug. So we can actually use this whole absolute path in our program in here. We can actually just do this, and then here you see the absolute path. So now it goes to grades.csv, but it's not okay. So it's located in fopen, right? So you can see here it's located here, right? So this one will also work because you provided the absolute path. So fopen doesn't really care if you give the relative path or the absolute path, but it'll be able to understand. So we can run this one. So there you go, it's able to find the grades.csv file again. But you typically don't want to have the absolute path because you want this program to be able to run on other people's computers. And if you hard code the absolute path, like with users Henrik, like maybe another user like Joe or Bob, if their name is not Henrik and then they put their grades.csv in another file or like in another directory, then their program will never find it because it's looking for the file inside this file path with this file path. So a lot of times we need to use the relative path because the relative path is with relation to the working directory, and other users will have the same working directory here, like fopen. They'll have that as their working directory, and relative to that working directory, you can provide the grades.csv file here. So this makes it easy to just give the program to other people and just tell them to make sure that the .csv file is located one directory above the working directory, and then you just give that instruction to them and they'll be able to know, and they'll be able to run this in their computer as well. Okay, so I hope that answers your main question on how to use fopen, but I also want to give some helpful tips that you need to carry with you for good coding practices. So a good coding practice is to make sure that you're actually able to find this CSV file. You want your program to actually check if it was able to open it, because if it doesn't open it, like say we do this and then we run it again, then you're going to get into that segmentation fault, and you don't want your program to be saying segmentation fault, especially if you're sharing this program to other people to try out. That's just not a good look on you, right? So you want to make sure your program can handle if it's able to open the file or not. So what we do is fopen actually returns null if it cannot find the grades.csv file. So we can put an if check here. We can say if file equals null, then we can say printf error opening file. So if we run, and then we can return 1. So we run this one, and then now it can say error opening file. So now your program is able to at least tell the user what's going on. So now they're not second guessing other parts of their code. They know that the problem that they're running into right now is a user error, where the user is not providing the correct path or is not providing the right file to the program. So it's good practice to have this check in your program. Another thing you can do is you can use perror, and then if you do perror, it will also tell you some other information as well. So if you run this one, if you do perror, now it says error opening file, and then it says no such file or directory. So the error is more descriptive in that sense. So now the user has a more understanding on why it wasn't able to open the file. It's not able to open the file because the file doesn't exist. So then they'll give the user an idea like, okay, so the program can't find this grades.csv file. It's probably not in the right working directory. And so they can just move it there if they're running this code. If they don't have access to the code, then they can just move the CSV file in the right location and then be able to use your program. So this is other good practice to have. Another thing that you should do is after you use fopen, you should always pair your fopen with fclose, because you want to make sure you always close your files. And so we can do fclose, and then we put the file name, file, and then this will make sure that we close the file. Okay, no such file or directory. Let's use the relative path here, ... And then, okay, so now the program is running, gives us the first line. And at first, this may not seem that important because you're not going to really notice it with small programs. But with bigger programs, this can be a big deal because this will trigger what are called resource leaks. And when you have a resource leaks, like if there's an OS limit on how many files you can open, then there will be some instances where you cannot open more files and then your program no longer works as intended. So you want to make sure you pair an fopen with a fclose. Otherwise, you'll make your program run more efficiently and not have too many files that are open that are unnecessarily open. Technically, the OS will clean up the files for you, but you want to be able to be responsible with your resources, right? So you want to make sure you close your files, and having this kind of habit will help in the long run when you have bigger programs, and then you'll save more time later when you run into issues that you're unsure why it's happening. But if you have this habit of doing this, then you won't run into those issues. All right, so there you go. I showed you how you can get your C program to read CSV files or whatever files in C using fopen. Also went over some common beginner struggles with fopen, and I talked about the working directory and the source file directory, how they're different things, and then how you can use different relative paths or absolute paths to make sure that you use the right path for your file so that your program can find your file and be able to read the data from it. So I hope now you're an expert at fopen and you won't have any more problems using it to read more data from your files. Alright, like I mentioned earlier, if you're just starting off in your programming journey and you don't know where to start, you can download my 30-day beginner coding challenge. And it's a 30-day guide where I teach you how to build those 4 beginner programming projects. It's really beginner friendly, and I go step by step on how to build each one and go through the tutorials that you need to build each one. So download that in the link in the description. So this video was more about making sure your program can find the file. But if you want to learn how to parse that file, process it, and get all of the data into your program, you can watch this video over here. And if you have any other questions, feel free to let me know in the comments section and I'll be sure to answer you there. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace.